Party people, what's going on? Thanks for checking out another episode of the podcast. It's been a couple weeks since I uploaded a episode. We'll talk about that more, why it's taken me so long. I'll give you a hint. A little bit of family time. In the mountains, in the Smokies. We had a good time. But first, I want to welcome this gentleman. Now, what's crazy is social media can be a wonderful thing, or it could be a pretty nasty thing. And this is one of those cases, a shining example of when it was an amazing thing. Social media linked me up with Michael Ervin. Michael is the founder of the Coal River Coffee Company. And what's crazy, I'm a coffee fanatic myself, and I've seen the Coal River Coffee out at places. I've seen them doing stuff around the state and around town. And I don't know that I've ever had it. And I think Michael's going to fix that after this episode. So help me welcome the founder of Coal River Coffee Company, the great Michael Ervin.
The Nick Scott Effect. The Nick Scott Effect. Available everywhere podcasts are found.
It's not easy. I don't feel the things that I felt anymore. And I won't dare just to hang my head. You know I can. My hands are tied.
Yeah, man, it's been a busy day already. I made some deliveries of our coffee down our Route 60. I kind of call it a Route 60 route. And so we go down all the way down to Anstead and Hawks Nest and back up to Saint Albans. And then tonight I'll be working in our shop from 6 to 10.
I hear you.
Yeah.
The life of an owner never stops.
It really doesn't. I wasn't expecting to be working tonight, but just the way the chips fell, I'm going to be in there. It's fun. I enjoy working Fridays because we have live music.
Oh.
And I just enjoy being around that.
So tell me, one thing that's always fascinated me, whether it be someone in politics, a celebrity, a musician, a business owner, an entrepreneur, there's always an origin story. There's always that moment where someone goes, man, that's awesome. I really dig that. Or I love doing this. Or I wonder what it would be like to try my hand at that. There's always an origin story. So how did Coal River Coffee Company come to be?
Great question. I'll try to give you a short summary of it.
Sure.
But long-winded. But basically, I mean, I grew up in West Virginia. I grew up in Saint Albans, and I grew up along the Coal River. And so I spent many days just playing in the river, fishing, doing all the things that a boy does. And, but, I never thought I'd live in West Virginia, just like most of my friends growing up. We thought we'd go and move and make a life somewhere else in a bigger place.
Sure.
And I tried that for a while and lived abroad. I've had many opportunities to see the world, got to experience and live in Africa for a while.
Oh, wow.
And live without electricity, without running water, those types of things, and live in a hut. And it was amazing to do that. Lived in Europe a little bit, lived in Chicago for a while, and visited all the big cities and stayed there for a while and did all the things. And so I never thought I would really be back in West Virginia. And as it would be, I fell in love with a West Virginia girl, and back from my hometown. And she's more of a homebody. She'd come visit me in Chicago, and and a lot of my friends were like, dude, if you really want to make this work, you should probably maybe go to West Virginia for a little while. So I took a teaching job, and I never thought I would be a teacher. And so I was not, I feel like I was a good teacher. Okay. But, it wasn't for me. So I only did that 1 year. But I was dating my wife, who would be my wife, and got engaged, and we got married. And but during that time, there were a lot of cool experiences, but also some other things that happened. My father died. So my grandfather and my father died. So my mother was thrust into this situation where she was managing rental properties all on her own. And, she wasn't as young as she once was, needed my assistance. And so, there were a couple things I was doing along the side. I was doing the entrepreneurial family business, and I was also being a barista at the same time because I was like, I want to do something fun that I love. So while I was in college, where did coffee come into play? I was in college and I was like, man, I need caffeine that's going to keep me awake. And my roommate was a barista, and so he got me into drinking black coffee with a French press. And before that, I'd always had lattes that were really sweet and just whatever would work. And so when he gave me black coffee the way it should be, man, I never went back. So I became a barista and did the entrepreneurial things on the side with my family. And but my wife and I got married. We're like, what are we going to do? So we did a bunch of different stuff. So eventually, fast forward to 2016, and at that point, I was working a job that I didn't love, and I was like, I cannot do this the rest of my life. A lot of times I was working from home behind a computer, and I was like, okay, I'm going to become a life coach. So I became a certified professional life coach. I was doing that, and this isn't what I want to do. And during all of this time, like my mother had passed away. My wife's cousin had passed away of an overdose. And all of those things brought us back to Saint Albans, or back home. And we were always some of those people that are like, man, someone's got to do something to change our town. It can't come from a leader in politics. It can't come from, it's got to come from the bottom up, or come from regular people. And so, but for years I kept saying, someone's got to do something. And so my uncle was like, Mike, what if you stayed here? What if you moved home? What would that look like? And I'm like, well, I don't know. It blows my mind to consider that. And so I was like, I guess I could start something, a business that would bring something, some life back to the community, an amenity. So I looked into a ton of franchises, took a couple years, and just thought through it. But I always kept coming back to, what if I had my own coffee shop? And, I'm like, well, I don't know if it'll work in St. Albans. I don't, there's got to be the right things to go along with that. And I knew what I was doing being a barista, and I was already roasting coffee as a hobby. And it was good. One day, I made this roast, and I gave it to my wife, and she was like, dude, do you think someone will buy a cup of this? And I was like, I don't know, but it's one of the best cups of coffee I've ever had. I'm shocked that I did this. Let's see if I can do it again. And I was able to reproduce what I had achieved. And so, we shared that cup with other friends, and they were like, hey, we have a coffee business. Let's sell it out of our coffee camper. And so they did that. And that just kind of began the wheels turning. And so I started an LLC in January of 2018, Cold River Coffee Company. And before that, I didn't know what the name would be. But one day I was actually drinking that coffee, and I was sitting on my back porch looking over the Cold River. So we had already moved back. We'd committed to being a part of the change we wanted to see in Appalachia, and in particular in my town. And, I called my mayor, and I'm like, hey, on this, you don't know who I am, but, I want to start a business here. What do you recommend? I looked at every building that was possible. And so nothing seemed to work in our favor at that point. And until I took our family back to Africa so they could kind of see where my wife and I both went and stayed in a hut. And we wanted my kids to see that, so we took them there. And then when we came back, I was like, let's just drive down Main Street one more time. So we drove down, and there was a for rent sign in a building that had never been there before. So I called the number, left a message. A couple hours later, the guy calls me back because he's Michael. He's like, hey, in this building, you don't know me, but your grandfather got me into business, and I want to get you into business. So let's meet up and I'll show this place to you. And the rest is kind of history. You know, we had to do all the renovation ourselves, and we started a Kickstarter, and it became fully funded and even more. So through all of that, you know, we raised a great amount of money, and you know, by the grace of God. And so I quit my job, and I was like, all right, now I've got pressure on me because I work better under pressure, and to get this place open so we can have some cash flow, so we can have some money. It was like more of a survival thing. And so my buddies were all helping me, and we got it open, and we sold our first cup of coffee on June 14th of 2018 on Main Street. And, but we had our grand opening August 10th of 2018. And so the whole idea was we're going to roast coffee, but the point is so that we can brew community in our town. And so taking like the entrepreneurial skills and attitude, mentality that I've learned over the years and through my family, you know, we applied that to something that I was passionate about, and began learning the business side of it.
Oh, sure. Dude, that is an incredible story. Thank you for sharing that. And, you know, what's incredible to me is I love the entrepreneurial spirit and it seems like the more people I've spoken to, and even in my own life, you know, success comes to those who find it out of almost the last resort. You know, it's like, it's down to the wire. I've got to do something. What am I good at? What am I interested in? What am I experienced in? And go after it. And it's funny. You talked about a West Virginia girl kept you and brought you here. That's my same story. You know, I'm from Cincinnati, born and raised. Grew up, if you're familiar with Kings Island, I graduated from Kings High School. I used to be able to sit in my cafeteria and watch the Vortex go around, which, side note, total bummer. The Vortex is gone. They tore that down. That was like my favorite roller coaster.
I loved it.
But so when I moved here, the radio station I worked for many, many years, moved me here from Ohio. My plan was just to come here for 2 years, get a little resume bump, and go back home. You know, the folks I worked with in radio back home were my family. They still are my radio family. They're still the folks that I call and lean on 15, 16, 17 years later. And but after a year of being in West Virginia, I met Kelly, and we started dating. And I remember it was 2008. I was 20. I don't even know if I was 24 yet. I was probably 23. And Memphis, Tennessee called and offered me an afternoon drive position. Afternoon drive is 3 to 7 on the air at a radio station in Memphis, a major market, you know, which would have been a major move for me from small market Charleston. No offense to Charleston, but it's a small radio market. Yeah. And I turned it down, not because I liked where I was at. No offense to that radio station, because it was small market. I turned it down for a girl. And, you know, I knew that I had to do something out of necessity like yourself. And that's where I started my DJ business. So that's where I always circle back to. It seems like the entrepreneurial spirit really blooms out of almost necessity, that we've got to figure something out, and we've got to figure out something fast. And usually it becomes something pretty incredible. So that's awesome, man. And I'm a coffeeaholic. If I don't have 2-3 cups in the morning, I'm wrecked. So, yeah, I'm familiar with the French press. I'm very sad. Mine broke about a month ago. Had it forever. Started leaking out of the bottom, so I got to get me another one. But I tell you, a great coffee that I found recently. We went to Disney in December. We went twice last year, and I remember in the room they had basically like a Keurig cup, and I was like, "Man, that's some good coffee." And it just had the Disney castle on it. And I'm like, okay, I didn't know what this was. We went back in December. I found out it's called like Joffrey's or something. Are you familiar with that?
Yeah, that's their kind of their brand.
Yeah,
the coffee house brand they've taken on. I did some research on it a while back because we're big Disney fans as well, and I was really interested in what they do. But yeah, I think they roast their own coffee, which is why I think it tastes so much better.
Yeah,
and I think they source it well.
Sure. Well, I know when we went back, had another cup one morning before we headed out to the park, and we stayed at Beach Club there, and which we could walk to Epcot. And we were getting ready to head out to Epcot. I had my morning cup of coffee, and I was like, man, this coffee's for a Keurig K cup. This is fantastic. And I remember going to the gift shop, and they had Joffrey's coffee, and they had it already ground. And they're like, yeah, that's what's in our K cups. So I was like, snatch. So my French press broke on me doing some Joffrey's coffee.
Oh, man. That's a bummer.
But I fully expect to get a hookup on some Coal River coffee to taste some French press.
Absolutely.
Coal River coffee.
I'm gonna have to hook you up with maybe a new French press and some coffee.
Dude, that would be amazing.
Yeah, man.
Let me ask you something. So, as a coffee nerd myself, I love coffee, and my wife is a Starbucks snob, as I call her, but she doesn't drink coffee. She loves their black iced tea. But I always love when you go in, you smell the coffee, you see the beans, you see them in the canister. You go to any other type of coffee store, coffee shop, probably yours as well. Unfortunately, I've not been in your store yet. I have to stop by.
Yeah, anytime.
How do you roast coffee beans? I don't want you to give away any industry secrets here or anything like that, but how does that process work?
Well, it's a great question. There are two primary methods of roasting coffee. Right now, the most popular and one of the oldest is drum roasting. And usually that uses gas. Unfortunately, it can be it leaves more of a carbon footprint, but there's a more, I guess you could say, a newer or an advanced way that leaves less of a carbon footprint, and it's called fluid bed roasting. So when I started roasting, I was using a drum roaster like normal, and then I did some more research and discovered this fluid bed roasting idea. And I believe it was Steve Harvey where I first saw it. It was on his show. He gifted somebody who really wanted to get into the business a fluid bed coffee roaster. So I found out who made it, and I called that company and spoke with the owner and the designer, the engineer behind it all. And so he ended up connecting me with a guy in my town, in Saint Albans, West Virginia, that was one team that had one, and he was wanting to sell it. And he got it, man, he hooked me up with it. It was a commercial fluid bed roaster. So that was what got me into the commercial ability of roasting coffee. Wow. And so, it allows me to roast more and faster and have my roasts be more consistent.
That's amazing.
And that, you call it roast theory, is what we call it in the coffee geek world. And someday I want to write a book about all this. But roast theory, I love it. I'm constantly learning, and that's the thing with coffee roasting is we're always learning. And right now, I'm really into this aspect that when I began 5 years ago in the commercial side, nobody even talked about it. It's called rest times, and it's where you let the beans kind of just rest for a certain amount of time, and you put on the bag maybe like, here's when you're going to have these peak flavors, almost like wine, where you let it rest for a while and it'll have these peak flavors come out and present themselves.
Wow.
So it's almost like there's this new adventure with roasting, even though roasting has been happening for 1,000 years.
Yeah.
And this is funny. If you ever come in my shop or whatever, I could maybe even send you a little video clip of this. But when we went to Africa with my family, Rachel and I went on a coffee farm tour, and just to kind of meet up with some of the farmers. And one of the older guys that had been doing this his whole life, he was roasting coffee over a fire in just a pot, and that is how people began to roast. It's just over a pot. Then once it was ready, they would pour it into just a big bucket and just mash it up with whatever, a stick or whatever they had.
Right.
Once it cooled down, and then they would basically immediately drink it. But that's how you roast coffee. And I've got so much knowledge. I do coffee seminars.
I never knew there was such a thing. That's awesome.
Well, we sell tickets to them, and I don't have one scheduled, but usually I do at least 4 a year. And so I do, kind of every season I do one. And but
That's incredible.
yeah, it's a lot of fun. And so we're going to actually starting a coffee certification training where we're actually like you're a certified co-river coffee, whatever we're going to call it, barista.
Sure.
And then we're certifying roasters now in the fluid bed method. Because
that's incredible. And, there's things for that in every industry. I've been invited, I've attended, and I've been invited to speak at DJ seminars. How do you do this at a wedding? How do you do that at an event? Blah, blah. So it only makes sense that in the coffee world that there would be instruction and mentors like yourself who've been there, done that, felt the pain and enjoyed the success on the other side as well. So are you just in St. Albans? Have you ventured out to any other locations? Do you have any aspirations to go anywhere else in the state or beyond?
Yeah, we never say outright no to opportunities. We go and explore them. We have a satellite location in South Charleston up at the Bridge Valley campus. Mm-hmm. And so that's it's a really fun. It's a little bit of a different setup. It's more food heavy, just because the people who work up there and come up there are like looking for lunch, looking for snacks and things like that. But all the students, man, they line up. It's pretty wild, the amount of people. And then we have a coffee trailer that right now for a while I was pulling that around and setting up in different locations all throughout the state. And like at that point, I had to apply for just every county's health department. So Sure. It was pretty difficult to do that. Now you don't have to. And, but now what we do with it is we primarily just do like weddings, events, corporate events where people can rent it out. And, I will go, generally speaking, and set it up and be there.
I want to say, I was sitting here scratching my memory bank. I've done 3 or 4 weddings where there was a coffee trailer. And I know one particular was not y'all because he plays guitar. So I play guitar for Bible Center here in Charleston as well, part of their worship team. And this gentleman has one, and he plays for, good Lord, River Ridge and Taze Valley. And he'll kick my butt for not remembering his name. I'm so sorry. But there were 2 or 3 others where there was a coffee trailer, and I can't remember if that was you or not. It probably was. I can't imagine there's a lot of coffee trailers that goes around. Right.
I think I'm like the longest running one. And, there was one called B-Box that came up and left. She's been around. She was actually one of my customers for my coffee beans.
Oh, wow.
And then there was a guy, Grindstone Coffeeology out of Huntington. They had one for a little while. They don't do it anymore.
I think I've heard of them. Yeah.
Yeah. They have a location inside the Huntington Mall.
Oh, yes. I've seen that. Yep. That's where I've seen it. Yep. This episode of the podcast is sponsored by the Appalachian Outpost. Now, it's that time of year again. For the last 2 years, they've done their annual summer shindig. They've brought in country superstar Craig Morgan, 90s superstars, Little Texas, some amazing concerts. And this year, they have Joe Nichols, and it's going to be a lot of fun. Happening July 22nd, Lyburn, West Virginia, Appalachian Outpost. You can find them at AppalachianOutpost.com. Directions are right there as well for you to get there and find them. So join us at the Appalachian Outpost, July 22nd. Joe Nichols, the annual summer shindig. More details at the AppalachianOutpost.com.
Super busy.
So is the coffee community, so the DJ community, and even the radio community, by and large, and the musician community. I have my hands in a lot of crap, man. I'm sorry.
I get it. Me too.
But 98% of the time, it's a community, and it's uplifting, and it's helpful. And I'm blessed to have, I would say I'm friends with almost every single DJ in the state of West Virginia, Southern Ohio, Southern Pennsylvania, Eastern Kentucky. I have about 40, 50 people I could call on if I'm in a jam. Same thing with the radio industry, folks all across the country. Is it the same we're talking about these coffee trailers that get pulled around in the different shops. Do you guys network? Do you guys help each other? Do you guys foster that growth of one another?
Yeah, you have to. I mean, in some ways, we always say that we have a common enemy, which is the corporate America. But, really, in this world, in this business, you got to have camaraderie and networking because, I don't know if you know Mia Cuppa, but I'd say the new Menon, he's one of I consider him a coffee mentor, someone who I've looked up to and asked for, advice. But we often share supplies. It's like, hey, dude, we're out of cold lids or this size cup. You got it? And we would just trade. Or, be like, hey, I'll give you 5 pounds of espresso beans if you can hook me up with a couple hundred, small hot cups or whatever it is, because whatever they mess up our shipment. So, those are some things that we do. And we talk theory at times. And so it's a very supportive community. It's really odd though, so occasionally there'll be a coffee business that'll pop up and, what I always reach out or Venu reaches out and, they're the ones that are really kind of standoffish. They're the ones that don't survive. And, and there's a reason for that. It's because there's room for us to grow. One thing that Venu and I and the guys at Hill Tree, I know they're wanting to do, and people, coffee dudes throughout the state, and women, we're wanting to create this kind of map, like the Appalachian Trail of coffee is the way I like to look at it, where you can go and get specialty coffee and almost make like a passport. So it's like, check out Coal River, check out Mia Cuppa.
That's awesome.
Check out the Black Dog down in Pocahontas County, go to the Wild Bean in Lewisburg, or, Mountaineer Roasting up in Morgantown, or, so there are a lot of opportunities for people to network. And I know that I consider Venu and several others. I guess myself, I still feel like a new dog in this race, but
sure.
But I consider us leaders. We're very much approachable and here to coach.
Yeah.
And but the people that I wholesale my coffee to, I'm there to coach them too. So I'll go down and make sure their espresso machines pulling shots well, and check their settings and teach them how to do little things here and there. Because it's not, and I'll do that for anybody, because it's more about spreading the community of, how do you, this is going to make everything better if they survive. It's that quote that everybody attributes to JFK, which is rising water lifts all ships.
Rising tide rises all ships.
Exactly. Yep. Yeah. Right. Mm-hmm. Tide lifts all ships. And so, I mean, and one of the reasons we started Coal River Coffee on Main Street is to kind of prove that happens. That can happen in small town Appalachia.
And I think you've hit the nail on the head. And I think that's true of all industry. Thankfully, 99% of my experience in DJ and entertainment and musicians are that way. I know there are 2-3 people right now, God forbid something happened to me tomorrow. I have a gig that I'm booked for. God forbid I was incapacitated in some way and I had to call on somebody. They would go fill in for me. And that's a great feeling. One thing that's always just blown my mind is that really doesn't resonate in the radio industry. Radio stations are very this is my people. These are my talent. These are my whatever. They're mine.
Yeah.
And it's very competitive. You're trying to get ratings and a piece of the market. The only time I've ever ran into my career where folks weren't very supportive or helpful was in the radio community, but only within that market. If I go to Dallas or Cincinnati or Columbus or whatever, everyone will want to chip in. It just seems like when we get locally, that's where the, competition gets in the way. And I didn't know if that resonated into corporate, or I wouldn't say corporate. You guys aren't corporate, but you know what I mean? They are your competitor against you. I didn't know if that resonated at all.
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't necessarily consider, the thing is with coffee is, especially when it's like an individual, an independent, I wouldn't consider us a chain, but
sure.
I'm often asked if we could come into Charleston. So, bring a open a shop down there, basically. And I'm like, nah, I don't want to, but I don't want to, particularly because I love the New Minute and I love Mea Cuppa and I love what they do. And I know that they're going to be doing something different than what we do.
Sure.
We're kind of that place that offers, while I love incredible espresso, love traditional lattes, but we'll be there. We're like, hey, let's, you can get a blueberry pancake latte. And they're like, we're like that kind of a place where it's, we do all these different coffee flights. We create a lot of things like that. And so we do something that's a little bit different. And, so I'm always like, no, I don't want to do that. I don't want to take away from Venu and what he's trying to do in the city there. Now, I will wholesale my coffee to whatever restaurant wants it. And, so that's a little bit of a different thing because they're going to be using coffee no matter what.
Yeah.
So like, but everything else, we kind of will go and
help each other
help each other out. And
I think that's super important.
Yeah. Yeah. And, that's what I was kind of thinking about when coming back to West Virginia or coming back to Saint Albans and making this my home where I'm going to raise my kids. It's like, I want to build a place. I want to help build a place and call others to do it with me because I can't do it alone, where they're going to want to come back, where they may want to be like, dude, look at what's happening there. I want to raise my family there. I'm going to go off to college. I'm going to go experience the world maybe. But I'm going back to West Virginia. Yep. And, I've been all over this country, this world, and there are beautiful places, but it's unique here. And the culture is unique here. And the opportunities are endless. And I do believe that we're starting to see some type of change that makes it easier for entrepreneurs to do stuff here.
Absolutely. I had Doug Scaff, who's in the West Virginia delegates on, and we were talking about that. And I said, man, I could, and you hit the nail on the head talking about you and your entrepreneurial spirit in the coffee industry, in the radio industry, and in the DJ industry. I could go anywhere in this country. And I know for a fact where I started in Cincinnati, the life that I'm able to give my kids, to circle back, you're talking about raising your kids, the life that I'm able to give my kids, I probably couldn't do in Cincinnati. I've made a name for myself and a living for myself in West Virginia that I don't think I could do anywhere else. So when folks, back home in Ohio, will razz me about staying in West Virginia, just like West Virginians razz Ohio drivers, it's just the thing. But it's like, man, West Virginia has been really damn good to me. And I've been here since 2006. So what is that? 17 years now or something. My wife looked at me the other day. We were driving back from Gatlinburg, and I said something about back home, and she goes, back home. And I said, yeah, back home, blah, blah. She goes, you realize you're closer to being more West Virginian at this point in your life than you were Ohioan. I went, yeah, you're probably right. But, there is something very unique and special here. What I love about it, what I told Doug, was I remember when I got here in 2006, it was very stuffy. You didn't have a lot of events. You didn't have a lot of things going on. The events and things that were going on were kind of geared to an older crowd, an older generation. Working in radio at that time, the only big concerts that came to town were Holcomb Yoakum Country at the Civic Center. Nothing... if you wanted to go see a rock show or a rap show or something like that, you had to go to Huntington. I just remember like, man, what is going on here? And I contribute a lot of that to Amy Goodwin, our new mayor. I mean, I think she has spearheaded a big change in Charleston, which I believe has spilled over and reciprocated throughout the area. Now we're getting a lot of big events. The Regatta's back, Live on the Levee. You're talking about the entrepreneurial spirit, a lot of events and industry coming in. So you're right. There's a different feeling in 2023, in my opinion, in my experience of West Virginia, than when I got here in 2006. And I'm here for it.
Yeah, me too. Speaking of that, we do have a kiosk inside the Charleston Coliseum. I failed to
Dude,
mention.
I didn't know that. That's awesome.
Yeah, so it's cool, and they'll often have us open. One of the things that they want to do is showcase West Virginia to whoever's coming to town, and so one of the ways they're doing that is allowing us to have our little kiosk open when the crew comes in, the band comes in, and so it's been pretty cool to tell whoever it is about the cool things about West Virginia and
Sure.
give them our coffee and be like, yeah, this is a West Virginia product.
Yeah.
And the word's getting out about it among crew and among the bands, because they'll come by and they'll be like, dude, so and so said, you got to go to there for the coffee, let alone for the concert. And
That's an amazing feeling,
yeah.
I'm sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's pretty cool.
So in the Coliseum, are you guys like backstage or out where the common, us folk can get to?
Well, it depends on the event.
Okay.
I mean, like if it's a big country concert, it really wouldn't be worth our time to set up and run a crew.
They're drinking beer all night.
They're going to be drinking beer and liquor and stuff. Like Disney on Ice. Yeah, we'll be there, whatever it is.
Sure.
We can make it work. Like wrestling tournament, basketball tournaments, all those types of things. We've done them. We're there, and oh man, yeah. So it's been pretty cool.
The Coliseum's a great place, and I'm so happy for the renovation they did. I've been able to do a lot more of, it's helped my business. I've been able to help do a lot more events there with the expansion and everything. And the fact that they're bringing in more than just country now, you got Five Finger Death Punch and, Falling in Reverse, Bush and Breaking Benjamin and, all of these concerts. It does, my heart well to see music, alive here in West Virginia. You can't have music and musicians. As a guitarist and a DJ, we are fueled by coffee, so you're very much a part of that conversation as well.
I know, man. They're all like, you're the star of the show.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's been pretty cool to be a part of that and to watch these major stars come to town and really complement what we have going on.
So how did Africa come about? Well, tell me that story. That's very intriguing. That's not something you hear a lot.
Yeah. So, when I was a teenager, I wanted to change the world. I wanted to make an impact, do something big. And so Africa, my cousin went to Africa, and so that was my main connection there. But I'd always wanted to go and check it out. So I went there to visit him for the first time, and that was kind of the inroad there to Africa. And so we had, my wife and I, I'd been there several times, a bunch of times, and my wife and I had an opportunity to go and train in this institute to work with AIDS orphans, basically. And so we went, but the stipulations were like, you're living in a hut without the modern conveniences of the world. So, it's going to be tough. So like, actually, this is kind of a funny story. When we were dating, I was kind of just thinking through, like, I'm like, do you realize, like, if we go forward and we get married, like, I'm a pretty crazy guy when it comes to like what I'm willing to do with my life. Like, I want to change the world. Like, that means I'm probably going to go live in a hut in Africa for a little while at least, and allow that to shape my worldview. And it really did. It changed who we were, both of us, in a very good way, because it showed us that how little we needed to live on. And while now, we're in the midst of suburbia in America, and so it gives you quite the perspective. But one of the cool things is that coffee grew right outside of our hut, and right there on a tree. And so you could literally just go and pick it and process it right there in your yard, let it dry out under the sun, and then roast it over a fire like they do where they grow it at the source, and drink it. And so that kind of began my interest in roasting the coffee, getting it from the source. Because once you do that and you drink it, it really changes everything. Like, you're like, dude, well, I'm not going back to, buying a bag of coffee off a shelf somewhere. So I was always looking, after that, I was always looking for specialty roasters. And what I mean by specialty, these are folks that are buying beans generally directly from farmers, and or through a middleman who is using direct farmers, and they get them, they roast them fairly quickly after they were picked and processed. So
that's incredible, man. What a story. At what part of Africa was it? Did you mention that?
No, I didn't. It was Uganda.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And how long were you there?
My wife and I were there for 6 months.
Wow.
Yeah.
Man, I can't imagine it. And I had a conversation about this with somebody not too long ago. We, whether it be Americans or English or anyone in what we would consider our first world country, we just don't really appreciate what we have. You know what I mean? Just running water, toilets and bathrooms and indoor plumbing and electricity.
Yeah.
And you just don't appreciate that because you're just so used to it.
Yeah, you take it for granted. And so we wanted our kids to get a peek into what that was like. Mm. And they did. When they were little, it's like there's no toilet. You have to walk to a latrine. Yeah. We have to go fetch water over here at this borehole. Oh. Or, if we caught it, up here, those types of things. Like, this is how people live in most of the world. That's how most of the people in the world live, guys.
Yeah.
If they don't, this is not the normal thing. The way that we live is not the normal thing all over the world.
So what's the next big plan for Michael Ervin and Coal River Coffee Company? Like, if you could see yourself 5 years from now, say we did another podcast in 2028, what Michael would I be talking to?
There are a couple things I can't share yet.
Oh, man. How you going to do me like that?
I know. But we're working on some big plans. And, so, and let's just say this, in about 5 years, you'll probably be talking to me. I'll still be one of those owners who jumps behind the bar and makes lattes whenever I want to, right? Whenever I can, because I love it. Right. And I'll still be doing some roasting, but we'll have coffee roasters. We have we're getting ready to officially launch our coffee internship program and coffee certification program as well. And so that'll include roasting, certifying roasters in the fluid bed method. There really isn't one that's out there in the world yet. And so we're going to be doing that.
I think you need to sign me up, man. I'd love to learn that. That'd be incredible. Okay. Not that I would ever want to do that as an entrepreneur or commit a commercial storefront. Just I'm a coffee nerd, and I think that's incredible.
Yeah, in larger, I guess you could say larger cities or markets, there are places that have they have roasters, and you can rent the roaster to roast your own coffee if you wanted to.
All right, let me write that down. Nick Scott is retiring in 20. No, I'm kidding.
Well, I mean, that's in my mind. I'm like, man, I'd love to have that ability to be like, if you go through my training and you want to roast your own beans for whatever reason, you can rent the roaster and then start your own little small business. So I want to be one of those guys that is launching other people into whatever their entrepreneurial vision is or dream is, and helping them be equipped. Because, I wasn't fully equipped when I started, but nobody is. Yeah. And that's the other thing is you will never have all of your ducks in a row. You're going to have to make mistakes.
Yeah.
And, but, we started in 2018, and I like to say we restarted in 2020. Like, we had to basically, we lost all of our employees, due to COVID, and only a handful came back because of life situations. And then, just figuring out how to generate cash flow and pumping it full of my own personal money, things like that, just being willing to risk and gamble on yourself and believe in yourself, like that. All of those things have occurred and have been tested. Watch myself make mistakes and utterly fail and bounce back, and then asking for help has been huge, and staying humble, or else you're going to get humbled.
Oh yeah.
And seeing that, and the other thing is being willing to cooperate with other folks. And so if we come back in 5 years and have another podcast, have some coaching that I'll officially be getting back into, more business, entrepreneurial, and obviously coffee. We'll hopefully have this mature coffee academy or whatever it's going to be called then. That's just supporting the coffee industry. And I think, and there'll be other things I hope I can say at that point.
Sure. And while we were talking, I don't know why this just popped in my brain. One thing I've always loved is, I have some marketing friends that work in the marketing world. They'll reach out to me for ideas. I love to brainstorm. I love to come up with ideas, and I love to create. I'm a creative person. That's part of my personality.
I can tell.
And while you're talking about these entrepreneurial opportunities, and you're at the Coliseum and this, that, and the other thing, for some reason, the first light bulb that went off in my mind was Yeager Airport and the Huntington Airport, because everyone going through an airport is getting a coffee. I don't care who you are. So, man, I tell you, like that, maybe that could be something in the future.
It could be. I've been knocking on the doors. I knock on a lot of. I have some intentional doors I'm knocking on right now, and things that are hopefully going to come out in the near future. And I'll continue to knock on them. And that's the other thing is, I've asked, big questions, and I get a no sometimes, but I keep asking.
Sure.
Possible, and usually it comes back with yeah, we'll give you a try. So,
well, and that happens in every industry. I've been told no. Thankfully, yes, more than no, but it happens a lot. But that thought came from the span of August of last year to January, I flew 6 times. I went to Seattle. I went to Arkansas. I went to Orlando, Atlanta, and I went somewhere else. My mind's drawn a blank. But I just remember walking through, whether it be Yeager or Atlanta or Seattle or connecting in Chicago or whatever, or even Orlando's airport. What business, when you were walking through, had the longest line?
It's the coffee.
It's the coffee. So I'm like, man, Coal River. And when you walk into Yeager, let's be more specific to Charleston at Yeager. When you walk in, they have West Virginia plastered everywhere. Everything wonderful about West Virginia plastered everywhere. You are in wild, wonderful West Virginia, plastered everywhere. I hope sorry, my watch went off. I hope that they hear this, or someone associated with Yeager Airport hears this, and they might. But what better representation if you are promoting local, wonderful West Virginia to those who are coming off the aircraft and enjoying our state, enjoying our city, are met with a West Virginia coffee roaster. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's a no-brainer to me. I don't know. See, in my mind, that's just too easy.
Yeah, it makes sense. And even if we did something that was not necessarily Coal River, but they allowed me to go in and start something different, maybe I have ideas.
Yeah.
But just throwing it out there, I mean, the West Virginia coffee bar or something, Appalachian coffee bar or something that would be there. And, I would share it with others, I'd be like, hey, we're featuring Mountaineer roasting coffee, not just mine. And,
here's what I would like to do for you. Here's what I would like to extend to you. So you would not believe how many clients of mine are always looking for additional vendors for their events. So I'd love to include you guys in my formal referrals if they want to come out. It's amazing to me that folks can have an alcoholic choice if they want, or a dry choice if they want, but also a coffee choice. And I think that's incredible. And And also, I'm very heavily involved with Bible Center in Charleston. I'm sure you've heard of the church. It's a very big church. Well, sometimes I'm wondering how I got involved with such a big church, but they are amazing people. We do events all year long that draw out thousands of people. And I'd love to connect you with my team at Bible Center, because there are so many events at the church where we do stuff in the parking lot. Like we have carnivals with inflatables and jumps for kids and family, and ice cream and cotton candy. We also do events for adults and families. And I think if maybe we integrated you to bring some coffee out, I think that would be an awesome addition to some of the community outreach. You were talking about community outreach events that we do. And I think that would also probably put your brand and your coffee in front of a lot of people that would love to enjoy your coffee. So when we get off air, I'd love to connect with you on that and see if maybe we can work something out. I think that would be an amazing thing. Yeah,
absolutely.
So as we start to wrap up, I usually like to keep these at about an hour, and I know as we're recording this, it's 5:30 p.m. You've got to go work.
Yeah, I'm looking at the clock. I'm like, yeah, we got to wrap up here.
So we're going to start wrapping up. Tell everyone where we can find you, your social media, your website, your storefronts, your trailer, everything.
Okay, so if you want to buy a bag of coffee anywhere in the world, you can buy it at coldrivercoffee.com/shop. And so we have merch, a bunch of different things up there too. But our social media, we're all over Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok. It's Cold River Coffee Company. And so you can find us all of those places.
Man, I cannot wait. I'd love to come down tonight, but we're going to go have dinner with the family, and I have a wedding tomorrow in Milton. Are you working tomorrow morning at all?
No, I will be.
Well, that's fine.
My kids.
Yeah. I have a wedding in Milton, West Virginia tomorrow, and I'm driving from Charleston through. I thought, well, heck, I'll leave a little early and swing by.
Well, it will be open if you want to do that.
I might do that. Absolutely. And also, thank you so much for coming on here, man. I love hearing stories of folks like you who are a family man, who are committed to their wife and kids, who have a passion, who worked it out and found success in their passion. And I think more people need to hear stories about that. So thank you so much for doing this for me, man.
Thanks for having me on. Thanks for letting me share. I appreciate it.